In the previous section, we've added sockets to this application. In this section, we're going to look more into tests. First, we will create isolated unit tests. Then, we will dive into Angular testing utilities. And we will also explore Laravel's API tests. In this video, we will create our first unit tests. After we create our first unit test, we will look into how to run our tests. Then, we will increase our test coverage. Unit tests in Angular can be found under Spec Files. This is a spec file for user service. We can find here describe function which describes a concrete module. We also have before each function, and each test begins with it. To start unit tests, we can write yarn test. The terminal process opened a browser. In the browser, our tests are executed. As we can see right now, all tests are failing because we didn't look into them while developing this course. So we have to slowly fix our test suite. In this video, we will focus on testing user service. So let's open user service spec file. And here, if we work with fixing unit tests, instead of it, we can use fit. So only this test will run in our Karma test suite. So now if we look into our test suite in the browser, we can see that now only our user service test is running. And we get an error that no provider has been found for network service. So in our user service, when we configure our testing module, we need to import a lot of dependencies. So first, the tests were complaining about the network service, so we need to import it. Also, we need to import auth service because it is also dependency of user service. And also we need to import socket service because user service subscribes for friend added and friend removed events. And then we also need to import HTTP clients module. We need to fix this import, so we need to remove src module from here. And we also need to import a router testing module. So we need to manually import router testing module from Angular router testing. And we need to add it to imports array. Now our user service should be created test has run and it completed successfully. So we've correctly specified imports and now our user service can be constructed in our tests. And now we can add more tests to our user service spec TypeScript file. Our new test should also begin with fit. First we have the name of our test. And later we can specify injections that we want to use in our test. So basically we have added socket service to our inject array. And then we also need to specify a second argument in our callback function. And after creation of user service, we check if friend added event fired observers are equal to 1. Because if we look into the user service, we can see that in the constructor, user service subscribes to friend added and friend removed events. And we can see that these tests also pass, but maybe let's try to break it. Let's try to remove one observer from our constructor and see if our tests will warn us about this. So basically, we can comment subscription to friend added event fired event. And the test should now fail if we save this file. And we can see that indeed our test failed. Expected 0, which is length of observers array, to equal 1. So let's fix it, and we see that our test works. So now we uncomment this file, we go back, and it's success again. Now we will test handle friend added event in our user service specification. We will check if initiator of the friend added event and current user and friends, if friends array is going to have new element of initiator. So let's go to our user service spec TypeScript. And I've added here the code, but we also need to import user and friend added event. So it was imported at the beginning of our file. And we can see that first thing we do is we specify that auth service is also going to be needed in this test, because we are setting out service current user. We set the current user to new user instance at the beginning for testing purposes. Then we specify constant variable with initiator ID. Then we construct a simple event instance with initiator property, which is going to have ID property with initiator ID. And now after we set current user of auth service, we check if currently his friends are equal to 0, so he shouldn't have friends at the beginning. But then we call our user service handle friend added event with the instance of the event we've just created. And now user's friends array length should be equal to 1 because initiator should be added to friends of current user. To make it work, however, we also need to abstract showing notification because toaster doesn't work in our unit tests. So we're going to move this toaster info call to separate function. We will call this function a show message. And it's simply going to call toaster info with the message. We could also create new service, for example, flash service, that would only have a reference to toaster. So this would be another layer of abstraction. But in this simple example, let's just use this show message function. And also here, let's change toaster info to this show message. And let's only call toaster info if toaster is defined. And now we can see that our test passed. But now let's add more assertions to our event, and let's make sure that initiator is added only if it doesn't exist. So let's also test this. So we will fire this event once again, but we will still expect that friends array length is going to be equal 1, because we don't want to add friends to our friends array that are already there. So let's make sure that that array length stays 1. And we can see that this test still passes, so it's good. Now let's try to break it. So now we check if initiator is only added if it doesn't already exist in the friends array. But let's say we forget about this condition and now our test should break. And we can see that our test breaks, expected 2 to equal 1, so initiator has been added 2 times to array. So our test correctly guards us against this failure. So let's uncomment this. And this is basically how unit testing looks in Angular. In this video, we've created first tests for our application.